today. I've got a couple of jobs to do. I've bought a 2-inch lift kit off Archam 4x4. Read a few reviews on these guys. You know, for the price I think they're great. It's only $710 for the 2-inch lift kit. I'm also eventually going to add new tyres. I had a look at two different sizes. The current standard size for the Mitsubishi is 265/65 R17s. To go to a larger tyre, which is, I was looking at the 285/70 R17s, which would give me the legal amount of lift in your tyres, which is a 1-inch lift for the tyres. Unfortunately, the tyres wouldn't fit in the carrier out the back. I've seen there's some modifications, but even that, the actual size that people mod them to is a 265/70 R17, which is what I've actually ordered. So hopefully they should be put on the car after I finish the suspension lift. I've actually trialled a new brand that I'd never heard of before, called Good Ride. Again, they are a Chinese tyre, but at the price they're at, which is $183 delivered and fitted from tyre sales, I thought, you know what, can't hurt to give them a go. I've read some good reviews about their traction in the wet. As far as tyre wear goes, I guess we're going to have to find out as we go along. So the first thing I'm going to have to do, particularly because I'm going to do the whole thing, I'm going to do suspension lift, as well as I've got the rear trailing arm bushes have been flogged out, so I've got to replace those. So I'm going to do it all as one. So I'm actually going to put the car up on 4 car stands. However, to get to the mounts for the front suspension, unfortunately I have to remove both the battery box over that side, and I have to remove the airbox. The big drama with removing the airbox is because of putting in the catch can and, well, the TJM snorkel. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of work because it's sealed in with silicone, so it's stuck in. So I'm gonna have to remove that to get the snorkel part out. However, to get that to move anywhere, the catch can's gonna have to move, because I just can't move anything anywhere. It's a very tight engine bay. So first port of call will obviously be to remove the airbox and the battery box before I put it up on stands. I mostly do that because once it's up on the stands, it does get a little bit high for me to reach over the top, and it'll make it easier to remove it now. As I go through, I'll record the processes of what I'm doing. Particularly, I won't worry too much about the removal of the catch can, because you guys probably don't have a catch can where it is. Awesome. Right. The next component will be to remove pretty much cables, disconnect the airbox. I can get the airbox out of the way. You can see we've got cables here, got cables here. They're pretty easy to remove. You just got to pop these off. Hopefully don't break them. Let me see this little flat blade screwdriver. Get in there. Try and pop that up. That's it. Get it out. So you pop the little flat blade screwdriver in, pop him out. Okay, last but not least, we've got to disconnect this. Just comes off like this. Easy done. And then your cables can be pulled up and out of the way and can be later reinstalled in the right spots. Alright, get them out of the way for now. Alright, next thing is to remove this bolt here to get rid of the big outlet hole there, the air hose. Then we'll get this box lid off and we'll see about getting the box out from there. Alright, as you can see, once you remove the top of the air cleaner box, so we've pulled the hose off. If you look down, there are 1, 2, 3 bolts to come out to remove the bottom half of the air cleaner box. The most difficult job, being that I've got the TJM snorkel, is the fact that you can see I've had to silicone that in place. I think the bolts here are just 10mm bolts, so you can just use a 10mm ratchet. Original airbox holder. So again, it has 3 bolts, they're all 10mm, they should pop off, and that should then expose access to where the suspension is mounted to. Righto. She's a little bit dirty, but yeah, so we can see the 3 bolts now that take care of the suspension mount. There's also the top one, just pop off the cap and you can see it down there, and I'll talk about that more as we go along. So right now I just need to leave it connected. Next we're going to move over to the battery side. So I've got to remove obviously both terminals, the battery holder, and remove the actual whole box itself, and then I'll be moving obviously the cables and the voltage sensitive relay all out with it. Hopefully that shouldn't take too much to get that out, and you'll see it'll be the same as the other side where we can see the bolts. So the box came out. I've just moved it up there out of the way, the actual bottom part of it. The other part took a little bit of extra work. There was one other screw that was holding the fuse box into the battery holder. As you can see, I've got the 3 bolts again in the top. I probably will do a little bit of cleanup before I put everything back together. I may as well while I got it out, if I can get it a bit cleaner. Other than that, that's it really. I guess it'll be time to start lifting the car. So obviously underneath the car there are lift points where I'm going to put the floor jack. To do that, I'll most likely chock the back wheels first, lift the front, get it up high enough so the wheels are off the ground, and then do the back. Okay, so pretty much it's a simple process of first of all jacking the front of the car up. I've got a set of 4 axle stands, basically because you'd be as mad as a cut snake to get under a car with nothing but a jack. Safety is paramount when it comes to these jobs. You want to make sure that there is no way the car is going to move while you're working on it. So I have 4 3,000 kilogram rated axle stands. I'll probably do one side at a time because with the jack I have, it helps me lift it up a little bit higher if I'm closer. Other than that, one of the important things we want to do, as I said earlier, is make sure that you have your back wheels chocked when you're going to lift the front, or vice versa. If you're going to lift the back, you want to make sure your front wheels are chocked. Don't just trust the handbrake, so make sure safety first. Okay, I forgot to film before I started undoing the nuts, but if you can see, this is the trailing arm bushes that I've got to do. You simply remove the 2 bolts. It's a 24mm bolt. They came out pretty easily. Once you've undone the bolts, all you have to simply do is remove the trailing arm. So as you can see, this side's probably not as bad as the other side, but you can see the bushes have collapsed, so they need replacing. I'm going to replace mine with white line, and I'll go through the process of doing that when I get around to it. Also, you can see the lower bushes in here. I'm still not sure if I'm going to need to replace those. They're looking pretty good nick, but I figured while I've got it off, I might have a quick read up out of the manual and see if they're pretty easy to do. Alright, pretty much it's exactly the same thing for the other side. There really is no difference. Okay, so now the trailing arm is off. How am I going to get out the bushing here? Now, I do have a 12-ton press which I picked up for $230 from Repco. Unfortunately though, they're incredibly hard to push out because I do not have a big enough socket to do this. Yeah. Obviously the car's up on wheels, can't go and buy one. Another way of doing it is you drill out around the whole rubber area, Then you cut through the collar utilising a reciprocating saw, and then you can bang it out with a cold chisel and tidy it up with your Dremel tool. A little bit of an air chisel as well kind of helps all the way through. Right, so I'm going to clamp this down on my sawhorse. Don't own a bench vise, which would probably actually be a better way to hold it. Now the other problem too with pushing out the bushing on the trailing arm is you can see it's actually just hollow thin metal. I have read other blogs where people have tried to push out the old bushing and have actually bent the trailing arm, so they had to replace the whole trailing arm. This way should be a bit of blood, sweat and tears, but it will come out. I'll see if I can get some footage of it while I do it. I've got my boots on. I'm going to take a cold chisel and I'm simply just going to bend this in on itself. We'll have a look at it once I get started. So there's the inner ring that I banged in with the cold chisel. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hammer it from the top and knock it out. Anyway, there's what's come out of the center section there. Now I've just got the outer ring to go. Not sure if it's cut quite enough, so I might just give it another bit of a go with the reciprocating saw just to get through that last little bit of the outer ring and then see how we go. All right. Righto, that's the inside collar of it. So now what it looks like is this. How you can see I've done a little bit of scratching and that onto the edge. Not too bad. You look down into there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Dremel tool and I'm going to clean this right up and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Alright, there we go. It's pretty much what it looks like after we've finished using the Dremel. Just pretty much a bit of emery paper. You could do it by hand with just your own emery paper, but obviously with a Dremel it's a lot quicker, a lot easier. Righto, as you should be able to see with the bushing, it does stick a little bit outside of the metal collar. The metal collar will sit flush in the trailing arm. So what I've done to assist with that is I've just got some scrap metal. I've cut 4 pieces, so basically one on top of each other. They will sit over the top of here and at the height of the nolithane that's sticking out. What else I do is best thing I MacGyvered it. Actually using just an old toe ball tongue, and I just stick that on top and I use the weight of the press to squish her in. Alright, so let's see how we go. Oh yeah, sorry, the other thing I do is inside there I actually just put a little bit of dishwashing soap just for a bit of lubricant to help it slide in. I'll get it set up and then we'll see how we go. Alright, it takes a little bit of mucking around to get it set up right. Hopefully now that should just push down and in. As I said, I've done the first one of these, just as a bit of a trial. It ended up going sort of off center for a bit, but I just moved things around and worked it in slowly, making sure I was watching as it goes down. Yeah, this one's going to do the same. So I just need to slightly move it over and start pushing down on the other side a little bit more, and it should hopefully come back and then get it back into the center. I'll move it and see how we go. Righto, with much fiddling around, I finally, and some shims and some blocks and whatever else, I've finally got to go down and in. So I keep working on this, and once I get it down to the point where it's just above the thing, I'll have to take this off, swap it over so that the bit can protrude from the end. And do the final push. Alright, that'll finish it off in a sec. So anyway, that's finally got it in. It was definitely more difficult than the first one, but time and patience get you everywhere. Righto, well, that's the trailing arm, that's the front rear trailing arm bush. Now I'm going to replace the rear trailing arm bush. I kind of looked at it two ways at the moment. One, I'd probably have to remove the whole knuckle, suspension knuckle, which is going to be a job and a half. Or I could try and remove it in situ the way I did with the upper bush, where I drilled out around the rubber, cut through the collar, banged it out. I think I'm going to try this method simply because I've got nolithane bushes to go back in, which means I should be able to do it without a press. But we'll find out shortly after I give it a crack. So again, very similar to the previous method, I'm just going to drill out the rubber and hope for the best. Alright, she came out pretty nice and squeezy. So now I'm going to cut the collar. I use my reciprocating saw, cut through the collar, get it out, and then we'll see how the bushes go back in. I'm going to try a method where I just use a bolt to help me bring the bush in. Righto. This one came out pretty much the same as the other one, so cut through the outer collar, dealt with the Dremel afterwards to clean it up. The actual bushes themselves pretty much push nearly all the way in on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a clamp and some steel, and I'm just going to squeeze it in, pretty much. Utilising just the G-clamp should be able to get that in, no worries whatsoever. Righto, that's ready to go. That one's ready to go. All I needed to do for the other half of it was banged it in, so G-clamp on this side and hammered it in on the other, metal rod through. This one's ready to go, just going to put the metal rod through that. Bolts to go back in, so it's just the two bolts, just basically the reverse of how we got it out. I've set my torque wrench to 148 Newton meters. That is for the NT model only though. There are other ones for the other models and other types of suspension other than independent rear, but the best option is get yourself a manual. Alright. The other important thing to remember as we put the bolts back, I'm going to put some anti-seize grease on these so that obviously in the future if I need to do the job again they're not going to get stuck, which will make things easier. Okay, as you can see the holes don't quite line up. I believe I've seen this or read about this before, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to pull the trailing arm slightly forward. So one of the ways you can do that is with a standard ratchet strap. So I'm going to go find one of those, I'm going to hook it up and see if I can get it to move, and I'll show you what I've done when I get there. As you can see, I've got the ratchet strapped to the crossbar all the way down through to the bottom of the suspension. I took the weight off the jack just for the time being, simply because I needed to be able to move it, and you can see now the holes have now been dragged forward, so it's aligned up, so I should be able to get the bolt through no problem at all.